Welcome to week 2, day 2 of Devtoberfest 2024. My name is Srinivasan Neelamegam and I will be the host for this session. As part of Tooling Tuesdays, today we have a session on Enable Work Zone to consume business solutions from other BTP sub-accounts. And with me, I have our guest speaker, Rupam Bhattacharya. Before we begin our session, I want to remind our attendees to join the Devtoberfest group so you can be eligible for the Devtoberfest contest and a grand prize of an all expenses paid retreat to SAP TechEd Roadshow stop next year. I would now like to invite Rupam, who is a senior product manager at SAP, to introduce himself and start the session. We are glad to have you here, Rupam.
Thanks, Srinivasan. Warm welcome to everyone. I am Rupam, a product manager at SAP, focusing mainly on SAP Build. I have been in SAP fairly long, during which I have been developer, architect, consultant, and now product manager, previous Devtoberfest and TechEd speaker. And I have a reputation of dealing with boring topics, so bear with me. I have enabled tooling for developers before. As a developer and architect, I've built applications, which are business applications in S/4HANA or BTP-based solutions. And today's topic is close to my heart. So I'm here to talk about one of the latest and notable enhancements in SAP Build Work Zone, which is enabling cross-subaccount access of BTP-based business solutions and how it enables multi-tenancy support within Work Zone. But when I looked at this agenda, I was wondering how I could make it more interesting. Of course, as anyone would do, I asked our AI overlords, the latest model 401, and asked, after thinking for a while, it told me to engage the audience by telling a story. So I asked it to generate a story, and it started. Once upon a time, there was Tom, the cat, and Jerry, the mouse. And I said, stop. This doesn't fit to my talk for Devtoberfest. I know my audience would mostly be a business application developer and perhaps SAP Build Work Zone administrators, and who would not be interested in some cartoon characters. But the idea stayed with me. And until later today, I realized I have a friend, Tom, who is an IT manager at a very reputed company where he runs the business, where they run their business best with SAP. And recently, Tom asked me for some advice on how he could empower his team, which is an IT team, to build new solutions on SAP Build technology platform. So I showed him this slide, not this slide. That SAP Build has been out there for a while, which provides you the flexibility to create and extend apps, automate processes, and design digital workspaces with low code, pro code, and generative AI tools. Now, it particularly unlocks the Fusion team development scenario as it's built with collaboration in mind. And SAP Build enables professionals like professional developers, IT experts, and business users to work together for faster and more effective solution development. And that's why the Fusion development, team development. Now, SAP, it has both pro code. It has both pro code offering, which is SAP Build Code, and also the low code suite of applications, which are integrated offering for not so pro coders like Tom, and that it would be best fit for Tom's requirements. He was interested, and for once, he wasn't obsessed about this mouse in his house and wanted to know about the low code offering. So I showed him this slide. I told him that SAP Build low code offering includes SAP Build apps, Build process automation, SAP Build Work Zone. Now together, it allows you to build visually, integrate smoothly, and collaborate in Fusion teams. And it's all part of SAP Business Technology Platform. And with SAP Build apps, you visually design applications and connect to SAP and non-SAP business solutions with SAP Build Process Automation. You can automate processes and tasks with drag and drop simplicity. SAP Build Work Zone is your digital workplace experience that brings together applications and content for various solutions to give business users the seamless user experience. Tom immediately recognized Work Zone, as he has already set up central Work Zone instance for his organization to access their SAP applications, for example, SAP S/4HANA. So I told him that I'm kind of an expert in this and wanted to flex my knowledge. So I showed him the next slide, even though he knew about it. So I explained a little bit about how SAP Build Work Zone offers a central entry point model in modular offering, and our lowest model being SAP Start, which is a prepackaged entry point. It can be set up with minimal configuration when you get a prepackaged SAP solution, for example, SAP S/4HANA or SuccessFactors. Then comes our SAP Build Work Zone standard, which you can imagine as an application site, which is a central access to SAP Cloud, on-premise, custom, and third-party applications. And this is an aggregator of all applications where you can give seamless integration to a heterogeneous environment that you may have. So it enables custom branding and extensions as well. And our flagship product, or the version, which is the advanced edition, is everything that there is in application sites, plus the collaborative features and features like content management, knowledge management, idea polls, and various other integrations, which makes it really a formidable business site or a business workplace. So he wasn't intimidated by my vast knowledge of SAP Build Work Zone yet. So I showed him the next slide, thinking this would intimidate him. But Tom's kind of good with architecture things. And among all the boxes and arrows that you can see here, he quickly noted that SAP Build is a service within SAP Build, SAP BTP, and which you can configure at any subaccount. And it enables central access to all SAP solutions. It could be SAP on-premise solution, third-party API applications, or SAP Cloud, other cloud solutions. And also enables access to applications developed using SAP Build. And he was very quick to find that out. I was impressed. Then I shared that, but then he shared his problem with me. Tom told me that he and his team in IT has already been using SAP Build Code to build solution to manage various IT products in a HTML5 application, but they had a problem. Their IT team has already enabled central access to all solutions in the central work zone instance, like S/4HANA and others, but their dev team uses another subaccount instance to deploy, manage, and maintain their application. They called it the provider subaccount for some reason. I don't know why. Now, their wish was to now provide access to these applications from this provider subaccount within the central and work zone instance, that is where they have all other application as a single digital applications entry point. And this, for some reason, they call that consumer subaccount. So he said, today it's a tedious task to consume HTML5 application across subaccount. And he showed me this document. And he said, well, you have to establish trust between the systems, set security headers for their site, and enable user propagation, and then individually add each application as URL tile. Didn't seem optimal or scalable to him. So then I finally got my moment of glory, and I told him, not anymore. Cross-subaccount access of BTP-based business solution is now enabled in SAP Build Work Zone. And with the same federation model that we have used for other SAP solutions like SAP S/4HANA, you can now also access BTP-based business solutions. And using same content provider model, there is this uniformity in which how you can consume other applications from different sources, including application deployed on other subaccounts. So let us understand how I explained this to him, and maybe some of you will benefit from that. So idea is that you, as a developer of an application, you would develop an HTML5 business solutions and deploy it to the provider subaccount. This, when deployed, will have the UI5 applications, but also something called a common data model based work zone content. Now, what is common data model? Let's first check that. So common data model is a way in which you define work zone content like your access controls via roles. So role is one of the entities. Your layout contents like groups, spaces, pages, sections, and visualization. And finally, the business applications and other UI artifacts like cards. So in a sense, CDM is usually represented in JSON format, which tells you what are the content that you are federating to a work zone instance, to the work zone as a consumer, and it would contain roles and their hierarchical relations with it, like which group contains which application, which space contains which application, and which roles can access which application, and so on and so forth. So once you design this CDM JSON and develop this application, you deploy. Once you deploy, the CDM goes and sits in the HTML5 repository on your provider subaccount, which is then hosted by the HTML5 repository for others to consume as a content provider. So what happens as an administrator, you would come and first of all create destinations for the CDM endpoint, which will consume this exposed CDM from the HTML5 repo, and also the runtime destination to route to the application once the user wants to access it. Based on these, you will end up creating something called a content provider, and we will see how. So I think he didn't believe me, and so I had to show him the documentation here. So let's start with the documentation. It's already well established here as how you create such a solution, what is the process, and so on and so forth. From a work zone administrator perspective, is also documented already. How do you consume such CDM? What are the various steps of creating destination, and so on and so forth. But he asked me for a detailed explanation and step-by-step guide with sample. So to make Tom happy, I had to write a blog for him. Now, things you have to do for your imaginary friends. But anyway, let's show the blog that I wrote for him. And here you have a step-by-step guide how you can go about implementing the cross-subaccount access with a respective repo. But instead of me showing the repo, I will show you some demo right away. So let's see. This is the right screen, right? Yeah. Okay. So I have here manage products as an application that is a fairly basic UI5 application that has been wrapped in an MTA for deployment to build. MTA as in multi-target application for deployment to SAP BTP. And here's the UI5 application. As you can see, it has all the necessary content like controllers, view, model, and so on and so forth. Now, the first thing one has to do in order to build the application and make it available as a content provider or to be accessed to the content provider is step number one, go to the manifest and ensure that you have SAP Cloud service name maintained. Now, this is the glue that binds applications that are part of a same business solution. Well, he was eager to understand more, so I had to explain what next. We went to a folder called work zone. Now, this is not necessarily has to be a work zone. It could be any other folder name that you want to select. But this is the content that you would have inside your CDM JSON. As you can see, it's a JSON representation. And for simplicity, I've taken a very simple description of the whole a simple way of explaining this with fairly primitive groups and catalogs, which are rather, I think most of our audience will be able to relate to. So here's a basic catalog defined, which is a type catalog, and it has the respective application ID, products, which of course we got from the manifest. If you see, this is the products as an application. Also, just to quickly show you, the cross navigation also has a respective inbound navigation target defined as, which can be used as your Viz ID if you're interested in using the Viz ID for intent navigation. And I've added that as the part of the catalog. Going forward, I have another group which has the respective app also added to it. And finally, a role that adds all three, the application, the catalog, and the group. Fairly simple scenario to explain how you expose a CDM. And then what do you do before you deploy? There are some steps that you need to take care of in your MTA YAML. In the MTA YAML, what you need to do is first and foremost, you to make sure that the CDM JSON is exposed to the HTML5 repository. And to do so, you must copy it into the folder from which your UI deployer will pick the files. In our case here, if you look at the, not the destination, but the app content, if you see the app content, you see the path is pointing to the same folder. That's why, as you can see, there's a resources folder generated. Where's the resource file generated here, in which you copy the files back. So obviously, you have to be mindful of your UI5 HTML5 app deployer module and which is your path, and then make sure that the CDM is copied by a custom build script from the current location where you have created it to the respective resource folder. And having done that, you can deploy this application, but there is additional things you could already do to make the life of an administrator easier, which is you can already create destinations which you can then deploy, which you can then make sure that they are auto-generated when you deploy, and then they could be used for easy creation. I mean, the administrator need not actually do that manually. So let's see how you do that. So let's see the destination content here in the modules, and you will see that we have the destination definition with the service instance name and the respective service name, service key, and the URL points to an HTML app repo runtime on the respective domain where you will deploy, with the CDM pointing to the respective business solution. Now, this is basically your SAP Cloud Service name, which I showed also in the end of the manifest here, SAP Cloud Service. So with this, it will now be able to deploy, and this destination will be pointing to the respective CDM, which they can then use to create the content provider. We'll see that. Once you do that, we can see the resources here where we have also created an HTML5 app runtime, which allows you to then access this that now creates basically the key with which you will access the access key with which you will access the CDM JSON via the client credential. And finally, you also have additional destination, which is nothing but your runtime destination. Here, it is not so important that you generate that automatically. One can easily build this, but anyway, for convenience, I've created this. And once you deploy this, you will find yourself in a scenario like this, where I'm right now in a provider work zone. This is where I've deployed it. So just to quickly see your instance in subscription, you can see the managed product has been deployed here successfully. And the HTML5 application of products is already showing up. Then what next? The destinations were also generated. As you can see from here, the managed product CDM, as I said, would be generated based on the app repo host with the respective runtime credentials already filled in the same subaccount, already generated. So ideally, administrator on the provider sub-account will be kind enough to export these, both runtime and the CDM destination or design time destination, export this and share with the administrator on the consumer account side. And not only that, the provider sub-account administrator would also have to whitelist the domain from where a consumer would be consuming this. Now, this is how you do it. You actually go to the security settings and you set the domain of a consumer sub-account, which again, because I'm the destination, I'm the sub-account owner for the consumer as well. I already have done it, but this is something you should not miss. Now let's go to the consumer sub-account. This is a fresh, different sub-account where you have nothing, as you can see, deployed, or from the HTML5 apps, you can see this is really an empty environment. But we did import the two destinations that we exported from the provider sub-account, the CDM and the runtime. Obviously, while importing, I had to take the client secret from the HTML5 repo runtime from the provider sub-account, which obviously you can access by here you have this runtime service, and from here you will see obviously the access key. This is not a problem because you still will be able to access only the CDM runtime, CDM through this access key. You can only use the HTML app repo runtime service, which only exposes read-only for the CDM. So that's fairly fine to share this and get this destinations configured. And so did I just simply imported the runtime destination. But here, if you see, the runtime destination should point to the provider sub-account work zone runtime or work zone. So let's just see if I go to the provider sub-account work zone. So this is the provider sub-account. I went to the work zone, and this is the runtime. This is the HTML work zone access URL, which I have added here in this place. And please be mindful of the specific cp.content provider, HTML5 content provider property. Only then it is considered as a valid destination while creating the content provider. So let's just see how you do that. I mean, let's already proceed there. So I'm in a consumer sub account. I will now move ahead into the work zone design time or the site manager. And here, first thing I would want to show you is the content channel. So this is what happened is once I deployed a provider, created the destination in my sub account, the consumer sub account, I already created the content provider, but let's me show you how it was created. So to give you a basic title, the ID is automatically generated from the title, and the design time destination. Here, if you see, I have selected the design time destination, which I imported from provider sub account to this sub account, and the runtime destination, which obviously you can select, and then selected the basic configuration based on the kind of CDM you expose. And if you see the report, here are the different things that are consumed. So one role, one application, one group, and one catalog. If you remember in my CDM JSON, I had exactly the same pattern. I had one role, one group, one catalog, and the application I did not define much because during the deployment, the enrichment process of the CDM ensures that all the business application information is already attached to the CDM that surfaces to other content providers or other consumers like the work zone instances or consumer sub accounts. So by virtue of that, all that information was brought in. You can see the managed product role is here, and the managed product application is here. Exactly how you define the managed product role with the single application. And having said that, you now have the respective role already created. Ideally, we'll go to the site and we'll add the role to it. And that's already done. Next steps usually would be to assign this user the respective users to whom you want to assign these roles. You go to the role assignment and you will see you will assign the role, which is usually in the form of tilde, the content provider name underscore the role name, role ID. So with this already assigned to me, I can launch the site and see it working. So if only it starts, yeah, good. So now you have the a managed product group already showing, and I can click on this, which is now routing me to the provider subaccount to show the respective application. As you saw, the consumer tenant did not have any application deployed, but now you can federate it from the provider subaccount. Well, so this was impressive, but again, he was happy, as in Tom was happy, but he quickly raised the next problem. He said, so I have now to expose each application as a content provider. I mean, that still didn't seem very optimal. I mean, obviously, it's much better from what you did before, and not very optimal still. So now I had to explain to him the concept of business solution. To explain the concept of business solution, I'll take you through another demo, which is built on the same concept. So he said he had extended his application scenario from just the managed products that they have in IT team to also other applications like managing orders from other employees for each product and then managing the inventory of their IT equipments. So I said, okay, if you have them as applications and you have them as a single MTA, which is a multi-target application, you don't have to define your CDM multiple times. As you can see in this example, you have a single MTA IT equipment solution, and there you have three applications: inventory, which is again, as you can see, is a UI5 application. Then you have orders, which is also a UI5 application, and their existing products application, which I showed you before. And all this together in one MTA, packaged and deployed via this MTA YAML. As you can see, you have the app content, which containing all three products, orders, and inventory. And I explained to him that you can actually now define a single CDM in one MTA and merge all of that together to provide one business solution CDM. The prerequisite to that would be, first, you go to each of these manifests and make sure you have the same SAP Cloud Service name, which becomes your business solution name. So I did that for inventory. I did that for I did that for the orders manifest. As you can see, IT equipment solution is what we named it. And same was for done for products as well. You have to believe me. Once I've done that, I went on to create the respective CDM JSON, which is now a little bit elaborated, which means there's one catalog, but it contains all three applications together. Similarly, you have this another the entry of this is the entry of the group, which has all three applications, and the role now not only includes one application but three applications together. And when you deploy, you can access this together as one business solution. So if you were to deploy this, you don't have to define these MTAs individually for each solution. Well, in spite of being a IT manager, Tom is pretty smart. So he quickly raised the next concern. He said, all the applications must be in one MTA. That is still not very efficient for a large business solution development team working in distributed teams and creating their own MTAs and managing their own lifecycle. And he thought he got his gotcha moment from me, but I had another trick up my sleeves. So I explained to him the idea of CDM merge, where CDM content defined in different CDM files in their own MTA solutions, but having the same business solution content would eventually lead to one single larger business solution entry point that can be available as single CDM endpoint. You can create a content provider against that and get all of that together. As he asked me to prove it. So obviously I created another solution for him. I think he's using NEMA for making his own solutions. But anyway, I created another solution for him with now different business applications, which is more targeted towards their employees. And here, if you see the purchase, where employees can start purchasing the IT equipments or raise a purchase request, then the not the resources, my equipments, where an employee can go ahead and see their equipments, and finally the return. So how to return your equipment if you have an equipment and it's perhaps not working or end of life. These applications are now bound together in this MTA, which is a different MTA, which is not the same as the previous one. And this equipment self-service MTA has its own CDM, which is here. The equipment service catalog, it has IT equipment self-service group ID, and which you can see is different. Here it is the managed catalog, IT equipment managed catalog, IT equipment managed group ID. And here you can see it's also a different role, IT equipment manage role ID. On the other hand, here if you see, it has IT equipment service catalog, IT equipment self-service group ID, and IT equipment self-service role ID. So basically two different MTAs and hence two different CDMs. And same in this, I have included all the three applications, return, purchase, and my equipments, following the app IDs. But there's a catch. How to make it uniform? If you see, I reused in the manifest, if I go to the manifest, and I've reused the IT equipment solution business solution name, or in this case, SAP Cloud Service, to combine this into one CDM exposure. So now that they are part of the same business solution group, once deployed, the CDM will be able to figure out that the HTML5 repository will be to figure out the two different sources, being one MTA, being the equipment self-service, the other MTA being equipment solution, and merge them to give you one single CDM endpoint, which you can then create a content provider again. So you don't have to create multiple content providers for each of these MTAs and manage them uniformly. Let's see in action. So let's go to a simple demo here, and let's see this. Sorry, I need to show you the merge demo now. I already showed you the simple demo. So let's go to this merge demo. I want to close these. Good. So I deployed this into another sub-account called provider only this time, just for simplicity. As you can see, I have deployed both the IT management, so IT self-service application, equipment self-service, as well as your IT equipment solution. So all of these are actually already deployed. So one of the service was failed. I should not have scrolled down, and now you know. But it is working. Well, now going to the fact that I already deployed both the solutions, you will be able to see all the HTML5 applications listed here. Let me just only show you the HTML5 listed. So invent, you already know the first application that I deployed, or the first one had products, orders, and inventory. But here, all of these 6 applications coming from both the MTAs are deployed under same business solution name. And that's exactly the trick that allows you to now merge CDMs and consume one single endpoint create one single content provider. So before I move to the consumer side, let me explain to you, even here, if I search for equipments, and here if you see, both of the solutions are deployed with the same MTA definition of the destinations, which I already explained to you before in the managed product scenario. And all the destinations were created automatically when the deployment happened for both the MTAs. But you don't need both the destination actually, because both the destinations now will serve the same MTA endpoint. So let's move to the consumer sub account. Here I have imported. So if we, again, just for your information, again, there is no there's only a separate application that is subscribed here. Those applications are not here in this sub account, and we will now consume them from the provider sub account. So here, if you see, I imported the two. Sorry. No. Wait a second. Somehow my destinations are not, it's showing below, that's why. Okay, I should have searched for it. I had a tiny heart attack there. That's okay. So I have imported the two destinations from the provider subaccount, one being the IT equipment CDM, and not all four of them. I don't need them, and the respective runtime, which is now pointing to the provider subaccount alone. So with this, I will show you, or I can just close this and start this from the subscription side so that I can show you the provider subaccount now. I just opened the sub provider or the consumer work zone site, and here I've already created the respective content provider, which I call just IT. And let me tell you how I did that. Obviously, I used the IT equipment solution CDM and the events. Sorry, you don't need the event solution. You need the IT equipment solution runtime. And with this, I've already created the respective uh, 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 content provider. And if you see the report now, you would see there are total 12 content items that have been imported. There are 6 apps, 3 for both the applications, as they were all part of the same business solution. And hence, you create only one content provider. And if you go to this place, you see both the roles containing 2 different MTAs are also now merged together in and supplied by the same channel or the content provider. And of course, I've been to my if I go to my user, I've assigned myself both these roles that were generated by creating the content provider. I don't want to assign them because I've already assigned them. Yeah, you can see both of them are now assigned, the self-service and manager role. And with this, both these roles are assigned to me. I've gone to the respective site, assigned the 2 roles to it, and good. Let's see how I can consume them. And you will see now both the groups appearing. And all 6 applications are appearing as one single business solution. And that's how you can provide a complex business solution access via the CDM model or the content provider model from cross-subaccount. Well, Tom was happy to know this, but he wanted to send him the visual representation of the dev flows so that he could remember. So I had created this slide for him to explain how he should go about learning about this going forward, and it can also help us recap here. So what does the developer do? They include the SAP Cloud Service, which becomes your business solution at the end. Then they define the respective CDM JSON. I showed you where to find more information around CDM entities like roles, spaces, pages, and applications. You then add the MTA content, then add the MTA build script, which copies your CDM JSON from the folder where you created it to the UI deployer resources folder. And finally, you have the option to generate the respective design time and runtime destinations within your MTA and have this available. So once you deploy this, the HTML5 repo is ready with your CDM for anybody to consume from any other subaccount. The work zone administrator would first import, if you have already generated for them, they would import this particular application, the respective destinations and create a respective content provider in the content channel in the consumer subaccount work zone instance. Post that, the flow is fairly simple, how you would do anywhere for any normal scenario or even for locally deployed solutions. So you can assign the role to the user, assign a role to the site, and assign the corresponding users, which are the roles that whoever needs to access this. And then the user can access through it. So user basically authenticates and accesses the content from consumer sub account, where he can be centralized instance where all content federation content is available. And there, obviously, when the user clicks on it, based on the runtime destination, the managed app router in work zone central instance on your consumer sub account will route you to the respective application on the provider instance. And so he was quite happy, and I already showed you samples and demo, but then he also wanted all the links together. So I have put them together in this slide and sent it across. And he was fairly happy. He and his team did a a fantastic job of implementing the entire application, and he went on to build newer solutions on the same model. So Tom and his team, his IT team, got fairly excited. They followed the latest CAP development know-how in build code using Joule. Uh, I recommend you learn that in other Devtoberfest yesterday. I think last week, Daniel had a wonderful presentation. You should catch up how you can create CAP-based solutions in SAP Build code. And using such capabilities, Tom and his team implemented another solution to manage IT incidents. Obviously, he had the same scenario of needed to develop in one sub-account and manage and maintain it in one sub-account and federate it to other centrals instance. So he used the same knowledge that I shared with him previously and was able to do the same for the incidents application. A few days later, Tom ran into his friend Jerry from HR. Now, the names are purely coincidental. Or maybe because I don't have the paid version of ChatGPT. Maybe, I don't know. But Tom ran into Jerry, and then Jerry, being from HR, was praising Tom for his amazing new success in implementing solutions. And he said he would want to use the same incident management solution for HR incidents. Now, Tom quickly consulted the one and only, yours truly, Rupam, and I advised him to make his solution multi-tenant enabled. And since he already used CAP-based approach, it's fairly simple. And I pointed him to other Devtoberfest sessions from past and this year as well, where he could learn how to make them multi-tenant enabled. But of course, Tom had heard that only way to make multi-tenant solutions was to use Cloud Portal service, and that he had to define the standalone custom app router and whatnot. So I showed him this slide that today, based on the existing content provider model, we also support multi-tenancy in SAP Build Work Zone. And if you can relate the last slide I showed, it's a very small nuance change in the whole process. You still develop a solution, business solution with your UI5 applications or HTML5 applications within, but it could be a full stack application, of course. And then you add your CDM content like you did for the single tenant solution. Once you deploy, the CDM would be enhanced and available in HTML5 repository hosted for other sub-accounts to consume as content provider. And then obviously this is different in case of multi-tenant scenarios, because you then have the concept of subscription coming into play. First thing the consumer sub-account administrator would do is subscribe to the multi-tenant solution. Once you do that, obviously the application is available in your subscription account, and then you use the same methodology of design time destination and runtime destination creation to create the respective content provider. The only difference being, in this case, the runtime destination should point to the same sub-account, this is a consumer sub-account subscription application, and need not point to the provider sub-account. And this also does not need you to define any trust domain across account, because the subscription flow takes care of that. Well, this is fairly simple, and let's see this in action. So I will take you to SaaS demo now, and here I have a different application though. Here I have the incidents application, which Tom and his team created, and then he asked me how do I go about it. So already enabled it as multi-tenant, as you can see, use the MTX sidecar model. By the way, if you go to Guided Center, you can also see how to create multi-tenancy in build code. It's fairly easy. And then obviously you have Joule. You can go ahead and get your application created fairly easily. And because it's build code and you are doing full stack application, you also have the respective storyboard. And although it's not related directly to my talk today being part of SAP Build overall, I thought I'll show you this. But let's now move back to what I was showing. So the first thing, like always, you need to ensure that your application that you have, that the UI5 application definitely enables a SAP Cloud Service name. That's important because that's the business solution binding that we talked about. Once you have done that, Here, I would show you how we created the respective CDM. So the CDM is in which folder? Now I have to look for it. Can't find it. Did I delete it? Configuration folder. This time I did not use the work zone folder. I used the configuration folder. And here you will see the CDM file. Keeping it really true to simplest, as simple as possible, I again created a very simple CDM with a catalog, with one in the application, same with one group, one application, one role, one application, and also included the group and catalog for our uh, generic purposes. But in overall sense, this is already available for us to then, once deployed, available for us to create the cross-sub account, content provider, and then consume them. But let's also look at the MTH YAML changes, but because I want to really drive back the point, first of all, you need to ensure that you copy, or at least in your custom build script and your MTA YAML, you have the raw CDM JSON copied from the resources folder, in this case from the configuration folder where I've maintained it, to the resources folder. Again, why it isn't to the resources folder directly? Because if I show you the app content, the path that I have here is the same folder. If it were some other folder, you should be careful and use the complete path for the resources folder, from where the UI deployer will pick all the content once you build it. So if you see here in our resources folder, it has the CDM JSON copied here. And also this is the same place where it dumps all the UI5 build artifacts, deployable artifacts. Well, I mean, I don't want to go into the basic details of the CAP project. I think many of you are experts about it. I know you definitely should look into other Developers Fest and upcoming Decade and previous Decade sessions to get a very good understanding of how to create CAP solutions, CAP-based solutions, and how to add UI5 applications to MTAs, and also to how to make them multi-tenant. So apart from these changes, I've also added the respective destinations as I did for the previous time. So here, if you see in the modules destination deployer model, I created the respective instance destination, which is your incident app runtime service, and then runtime service key, which then points to the something's wrong. This I believe I changed recently, but I forgot to change here, or it have got reverted. Just a second, I need to pick my cloud instance and then go back here, and this should be pointing to the. So this is how you would, the CDM host at the app repo host should be pointing to the respective business solution, which is what is maintained in your manifest. And that is how you would bring out all the applications and content, version content from this sub account, which is exposed by this particular destination. And if I were to say the last part would be obviously the runtime destination. Again, as I said, it's fairly easy to even create them by yourself, but here's really how I've created this runtime destination and deployed the application. So once if you see the runtime destination being deployed, let's see how it looks. So here I have a SaaS provider now. This is a SaaS software as a service provider, just for the naming purposes. And if you see here, the incident application is deployed, including the respective destination service, the app runtime service, from which based on which the respective service key will be used to access the CDM endpoint. And because I've already defined the destination, they would already be deployed into the, or they will already be generated in the BTP sub account. And you can already see the respective destination configuration here. I do not know what's happening. It's getting reverted. I should not have a service key there. But nevertheless, this is how the CDM is already generated based on the MTA description. The runtime destination basically points to the same provider account in this case, because it just was generated as the same account. But it's more interesting to see what does a administrator on the consumer side does. So the consumer, which is like a SaaS subscriber now, not consumer. This time I named it differently. SaaS subscriber, here the first thing what one would do is go to the service marketplace because it's a SaaS solution. Respectively, where is it? Here it is. The incident application would be subscribed to, which is already done here. You see the incident application is subscribed to, and because by virtue of the subscription, obviously you can see the respective application here in the subscriber sub-account as well. And that is why your runtime destination, unlike your single-tenant solution, your runtime destination connects or points to the subscriber sub-account because it wants to access the subscribed instance and through which your multi-tenant application would be able to identify the user against which subscription domain it comes from and then give you the partitioned tenant-specific information data access. Well, having said that, the other part is obviously the CDM was also created. It was all imported and exported into this particular sub-account. And now my sub-account is ready. Let's, okay, this is the subscription sub-account, as you can see here. So let's see how does it create the strange. Let's see if it can load. Good. So this is the content provider already created. Once again, let's see it used the incident runtime. Sorry, this is the one. Oh, yeah, correct. This is the incident SaaS solution. And here it uses the CDM for the design time destination, the runtime for the runtime destination. And once you do that, you would all can see the report that there are 4 applications right now subscribed. Row 4 content works on content that is being subscribed, one being role, app, and group, as we just saw in the CDM of this particular application. And to verify that, you can see this default role. I think I called it default role. Not very creative. Where is it? Configuration. Yeah, CDM JSON. I called it default role. Oh, wow, very creative. So having called it default role, you can see the respective incident management is already here as defined in your application payload. And obviously, this is coming from the application manifest, the app ID. OK, what next? Rest is same. You go to the subscriber side. You add the respective default role. I have the luxury of being the admin everywhere. So I ended up assigning the role to myself, which is the incident SaaS default. And now if I were to launch this application, you would see the application is loaded on the subscriber sub-account using the respective content deployment model. But this is a SaaS solution, and this is actually accessing the subscribed solution on your consumer subscriber application sub-account based on what's already available or exposed as a CDM in your provider sub-account. Well, Tom was super happy to find it. He wanted obviously more information around it. So I told him that there are obviously a sample app which you can already use, and there is a elaborate option how to enable the multi-tenancy, and you can follow this tutorial, and pointed him again to the work zone documentation. But Tom couldn't wait to know more about what's coming in the next. So in this regard, well, I didn't tell him much to spoil a surprise. So I let him, I might have mentioned a couple of things to him. So maybe I'll tell it here as well. So I introduced work zone, the concept of the upcoming model of work zone as a service, which can be used as a dependency in SaaS or multi-tenant solution going forward, which will enable local entry point based solution or with help of standalone app router. So anybody conversed with making multi-tenant solution using cloud portal service would be able to relate. It will be very similar to that. Obviously, with the difference from this and what we have enabled with multi-tenancy using the central instance model that you just saw is that in the current multi-tenancy scenario, you saw that it was essential to have a work zone subscription in the consumer sub-account. And yeah, and there you create the content provider as an administrator with destinations. With local entry point model going forward, when we enable that, a launch page would automatically be generated as soon as you subscribe to SaaS subscription. Subscribe to the SaaS solution, because there is a dependent workzone instance and the CDM definition, which also includes the site entity. And of course, this would mean you don't have to create destinations, subscribe to workzone separately on the consumer sub account, and so on and so forth. Well, I will leave Tom and you all with this teaser so that you stay connected, curious, and learn more about upcoming innovations in SAP Build, SAP Build Work Zone. And I hope you learned something today. And with this, I close my talk and see if there are some questions. Thank you.
Rupam, there are 4 questions in the chat. I'm going to read out and see if you have answers to them. If not, we can reply in the comments later. So let me go one by one. So the first question is, why do we need for each application a own destination to embed apps from other sub-account? We assume that it would get solved by embedding sub-account as own content provider.
Well, that's a good point you touched upon. Both for single-tenant solutions and multi-tenant solution, we are working on making this much simpler. As in the first step, we enabled it with the destination model, but going forward for single-tenant solution, we will also add additional automations that will allow you to create without having to worry about generating content providers. Sorry, having to generate the destinations. And for multi-tenant solution, we will try and utilize the subscription knowledge that we already have on the subscription side or the consumer side and generate the content provider out of it. So this is something we are working on. Again, I cannot commit on a date, but good, good catch.
Okay. So the process will be simplified, right? Little bit.
Yes, the process will be simplified.
So the next question is, does this only work for applications with a managed app router?
Yeah, so far, whatever I showed today is using WorkZone Central Instance and Manage App Router. I told you at the end something that's coming with app or standalone app router, how we will enable that. So stay tuned. It's yet to be announced, and when it is, you will see the documentation around.
Okay, okay, good to know. Third question is, if there are applications from different sub-accounts using different themes, how will it be handled in the work zone?
If there are applications or different sub-accounts and different teams. Well, I think you can have as many content providers. Let me understand the question. So you're saying you have different sub-accounts. Each sub-account is being managed and maintained by, let's say, a different team where they deploy their own solution, manage their life cycle, and you want to consume all of them in central instance. That's basically the purpose of WorkZone, I would summarize. That's exactly where you will bring in your S4 solutions, you bring in your other LOB solution, non-SAP solutions, and also your BTP-based solutions together in one instance. For each of them, you create content providers. If they're part of same business solution, this will be simplified again, as I just showed how you could create this business solution based. So this SAP Cloud Service naming based business solution, and then you can create content providers from it and expose all of this content provider content together in one site, which gives a seamless user experience of all the apps that the user must access. Sorry. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. There is one question, one participant saying, I'm struggling with adding a SAP UI5 standalone app router to work zone. I can only open it in a new window, but not in place within work zone.
This is something I think is best handled through maybe a community post or something, because this is very specific, but I am sure this is possible. I think you showed the demo as well today around that.
Okay. Okay, sure. No problem. And then the one last question is, when an application is deployed, what are all the things that will be automatically created in the BTP sub account?
When the application is deployed, it depends on what you have added into your MTA YAML. MTA YAML, if you have defined this destinations and everything around will be deployed based on whatever is, so the deploy description is available in your MTA. As said, CAP application, if you have other UI5 application, you will have a UI5 deployer module. They will all deploy the UI5 applications. There you will also have, the UI deployer will also take the CDM JSON, which would have defined and given the MTA custom script to copy it to your resource folder so that they are also deployed to the HTML5 repo. Plus, optionally, if you have defined destinations in your MTA to generate like DT destination, the CDM destination, and the return time destination, both will be generated in your deployed subaccount.
Okay. Okay. There is one earlier question. The attendee has provided extra clarification. The question was if there are applications from different sub accounts and using different visual themes, will there be a difference on how it will be handled if there are different visual themes used in different sub accounts applications?
Well, I think we have to understand that all this will run within the consumer subaccounts work zone instance, and all that you have maintained as an administrator, the visual theming and whatever you enable for the user will be available based on whatever you have defined in the consumer subaccount. The provider subaccount theming would not take effect. Yeah.
Okay.
And to keep it short, I think this is only thing that matters around theming is whatever is defined and enabled in the consumer subaccount.
Mhm. Okay. Okay. Sounds good. There is one last question. There is a question about how do we access non-SAP applications on WorkZone? Is it possible?
Yes, it's possible. You have this URL tile-based applications, URL applications through which you can create tiles and create applications. You can make them also XPlace, launch and use. In certain cases, you can also add destinations. But again, this is something documented. Please look up and or reach out in the community. Hopefully, you'll get answers.
Okay. And the blog which you showed, you have written, right? Is that blog available as a part of the presentation slides, the links that you were showing?
Yeah, yes, I have added that link, but it'll be, I think it'll be shared. Again, I'm not 100% sure, but definitely you can find the blog if with a quick search.
Okay.
I think the blog name is simplifying something. Yeah, simplifying HTML5 content consumption across subaccount. I believe this would be fairly easy to search.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you, Rupam. There are no more questions. It is great to have you here and hear you talk about this work zone. There were, a lot of concepts that were new to me as well. And it was very interesting. And so for the participants, in order to earn points for this session, there will be a validation tutorial posted at the end of today. You will be you can find those validation tutorials either in the YouTube description and or we will also post in the events page for this session, right? So keep watching for it, and thanks for attending, and thank you, Rupam, once again.
Thanks a lot. Bye.
See you. Bye.